Morning, everyone. Welcome to our closing session. I think it's been a great week so far. Thank you all for your time and attention, and really excited to kind of close this out with our esteemed physician panel we have up here. The session's titled Perspectives on the Candidate Journey, Insights from Permanent and Locum Physicians. So I'm really excited to kind of dive in here. My name is Scott Selby. I'm one of your Alto board members, and I'm going to serve as moderator today. So I wanted to kind of start off by introducing our panel for all of you. And we've got a last minute change to our panel. We had Dr. Simagari that was on our panel. We called in to emergency. He's a local atrium physician here in Charlotte, and so tied up and not able to join us. He's got important patient duties to take care of. So we have, let me just kind of go through down the panel here real quick and get us started. We have Dr. Andrew Wilner, to my right here. He's a board certified internist, neurologist, and fellowship trained epilepsy specialist. He hosts a bi-weekly podcast, The Art of Medicine, with Dr. Andrew Wilner. He also does locum tenens work. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Wilner. And then his right is Dr. Josh Gallardo, who has graciously stepped in on 4 minutes notice. Our panel here, so give him some grace, please. Dr. Gallardo is here actually exhibiting directly with RG Neurotech, which we greatly appreciate doing that. He's also a board certified neurologist and epileptologist as well. So thank you for joining us. And then finally, we have Dr. Hayner. Dr. Hayner is an academic physician currently on staff at the Department of Anesthesiology and Perioperative Medicine at Dartmouth Hitchcock-Nicholson. He also holds a Master's of Divinity degree in PhD in Legal Studies from the University of Virginia, and he is also a locums provider. So all three of our panelists are locums work as well. So we can hopefully get a lot of insight today. And, so with that being said, I will jump into it. First question for all of you, and I'd like to kind of go down the panel if that's okay. Just to hear a little bit more, if you kind of tell us what inspired you to become a physician, kind of what drove you there. Dr. Wilner, you want to start us off?
It's a little difficult to answer because it's just something I always knew that I wanted to do. And ever since I was like 10 or 12 years old, it's like, well, I want to be a doctor. And I think for me, about that time, I was also interested in writing, reading fiction and writing. And I thought people were fairly incomprehensible. And I thought that maybe learning the biology and pathology and learning about people kind of from the inside out might help me understand them a bit better. So it was sort of an intellectual kind of concept that I had. And I always loved biology and biological systems, all kinds of creatures, and people seem to be at the at the top of that list, at least in terms of complexity. So it was a big challenge for me.
Yes, I'm going to try to think back. It has been a journey in medicine for myself, but for sure it all started at a very similar young age. Before I even know what doctors really did or were, if I wanted to be one. I think it was mainly on the aspect of helping people, as simple as that, just helping people, being there to help people when they need you the most. I think that was kind of the driving force behind it, and then marrying that with critical thinking and problem solving in a way is kind of what brought me into medicine and keeps me in medicine.
I think similar too, that it was always what I wanted to do. Again, at the time when I did want to be a physician, doctor. And I think for me it was, I love science, biology. I wanted to do research. I wanted to be a clinician scientist. It was my way to take scientific knowledge and research we were doing have it the most applicable to helping other people and to be involved. On the clinician side seemed to be very exciting.
Thank you. So, Dr. Handel, let's stay with you. Can you just tell us a little bit more about why you made the choice to become a locums physician and why you choose kind of that lifestyle and that kind of career avenue?
We're here till 11, right? Trying to keep it succinct. The two major reasons. Mid-career, I think you saw from the CV that I made a step to go to seminary and ostensibly to do more work in bioethics. And also in the course of that, I became just enthralled with theology itself. Went on to get a graduate degree. For a while, I was able to negotiate part-time work, so I could go to class and do my work at academic medical centers. I found that has a half-life of about 1.5 years before you find yourself working full-time for half pay. But I finally got to my graduate work and I had to do something different. And so I made a big step to do locums to finish my graduate degree for a period of time. And that worked really well. And I've probably worked about 14, 15 different hospitals, locums, around about 2 or 3 of them have been long-term. But after a while, I found that working half-time locums and doing half-time my other career was a really good deal. I had all the flexibility in the world. I tell people that, when I work at Dartmouth, it's like having 50% non-clinical time. And with the benefits and everything, it was so much better than working in perm at an academic medical center or other place. So to me, it just emerged into this perfect balance of what I wanted to do.
Lauren?
So in my career, I think I have a little bit of a Goldilocks syndrome where I kept on trying different avenues and seeing what really fit me. And I think for me, it was a revelation when locums came around, basically for 2 main reasons. One, I would say flexibility, giving you the opportunity to choose when and where we were kind of be working. But then, unbeknownst to me, which I didn't foresee when I initially started, was impact. When you would think that as a locums doctor, you would have place filler, you're kind of just there to transition, but I actually found sometimes that work being just as impactful or even more impactful than a permanent position. Simply, one, likely they're in a need. So you're either serving an underserved area or somewhere where they had just lost somebody, and ultimately it's the community that gets impacted. And so I recall my first visit, first job was actually for a VA in California, and a wonderful experience and a very welcoming group of people, just happy to have somebody that cared and at this time offered time to actually impact these patients, talk to them, we negotiated good hours in terms of clinic time, and so it wasn't the same constraints as a permanent position, and I felt like I had a really great impact, and that's been the case actually with every locums position.
That's great. Dr. Wilner, any thoughts on that?
Before I answer your question, let me just follow up on that because I had exactly the same experience. About 10 years ago, I went to work as a locums at the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix. And when I got there, I got this wonderful reception from all the other physicians. And I figured it was because, that time I had a reputation as an epileptologist and I'd written some stuff. But then I discovered it was really only because 3 people had just left. All totally overburdened and overworked. And here was a warm body who was going to take over some of the responsibilities. probably didn't have a whole lot to do with it. But I have found that everywhere, that you are welcomed as a locum. You're kind of a bonus as opposed to, part of the furniture that's expected to be there.
I'm about to say it's something to walk in the morning up to that OR scheduling board, and you see this great sigh of relief on the other anesthesiologist who worked all night and he knows he can go home now because you're there. It's really, it's.
All right, so to answer your question about why locums, right?
Right.
Yeah, so my first locums was 1982, when I had finished my medical school and had just done my internship at the Long Beach Veterans Hospital in California. And, it's my nature that I wanted to do everything 100%. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm one of these people that always has a notebook I wanted to write, and I had a book in my head, and I wanted to write it. But as an intern, I said, internship's pretty hard, maybe I gotta focus on that. And so I did. In those days where I call every fourth night and work 7 days a week. So I just put my writing aside. And at the end of my internship, I talked with my supervisor and said, well, I have a book to write. Why don't I just stop? I'm going to take a year. I'm going to write my book and then I'll come back. And so I ended up as a locums. In those days, it was more sort of moonlighting, I guess. I now had my California license. I was fully trained as a physician with 1 year of internship, and I worked ER for a year, and I wrote my book. So it was a way for me to find work balance, because as a writer, I had this other work. If any of you are, artists or, kind of athletes, or, it's just something you have to do. You don't really know why, but if you don't do it, you're miserable. So I had to do it. So all along the way, I've had locums positions, I've had some permanent positions, but also something else that you mentioned about part-time. My first full-time job after fellowship was actually in Charlotte. So it's kind of fun to be back here. I think that was 25 years ago. And I was here for 8 years. And after I kind of got through the initial phase of proving myself and becoming a partner, I wanted to back off a little bit so I could do some of my writing. And there was no sympathy on the part of my partners, because any patient I wasn't seeing was not contributing to the ONED, basically, right? We're all on a productivity kind of system. And if I was writing a paper for the American Academy of Neurology on some interesting case, or I was writing a poem, whatever it wasn't contributing to the bottom line of the other 6 guys. So as much as I thought it was kind of interesting, it was a lot of sympathy. And I discovered that, so I tried taking a half day off. But what happened was, my afternoon would end up starting at 1:30. And then by the time I got home, it was 3 o'clock, and I'd end up taking a nap instead of, working on the next chapter of my book. And I think that's pretty universal, plus my salary was cut. And that part-time, full-time positions don't work well. And that I think locums is generally a better solution than trying to take your full-time position and trim it down. Now, each situation is individual, and you might be able to work it out. But there's not, also in the doctor world, you're either there or you're not there. And if you're viewed as the part-time person, you're not given the same respect. And I think that's important for physicians. Whereas if you're a full-time, temporary person, you have all the benefit of being sort of a full-time person, but you have the advantage of not being there all the time on your own terms, sort of in the locus scenario, rather than just trying to cut back. I think it works better.
It's like, if you're permanent part-time, they don't like you because you're not there. If you're locums and part-time, they love you because you're there. It's a big difference.
Well, thank you for that. I'd love to jump into more along the locums line. So I'm going to break this up a little bit, but maybe back to Dr. Rohner. what are some of the qualities that you look for when you choose a locums company? Start with that, just a locums company. How do you choose whether or not that's something you want to work with?
Right, so there's a whole chapter on that in my book. The locum physician's guide to locum tenens. Because if you're a potential locum tenens physician, one of the questions is, do I need a staffing agency? And then the other question is, well, if I do need one, which you may or may not, depending on your situation, how do I find one? And so I think the easy answer is, and when I wrote the book, I think there were only 60 members, is you start with members of NALTA, right? So that's easy. Start there. If they're not a member of NALTA, then you have to wonder, why are they not a member of NALTA? The threshold for entry isn't all that high. It's high, but it's not that high, and they're excluding legitimate companies. So, John, isn't that right?
That's right.
That's right. And,
We didn't name his name.
Hold on back. Our expectations are high.
all right, yes. And there's probably well over 100 NALTA
111, right?
111, so almost double when I wrote the book 4 years ago. So start there, and then my next sort of advice is what's more important than the company is your agent. And I think that, you know, suppose you're going to sell your house. Well, does it matter if you go with Century 21 or Remax? I mean, the companies are going to do pretty much the same thing. They're going to look for jobs for you, they're going to find you housing, they're going to set you up online with an account, they'll pay you. You know, they kind of, they'll provide malpractice. I mean, those are sort of all check boxes that they all have to do. So what's going to distinguish the companies is, well, who has the job that you want? There's some overlap, but so find a company that has the job that you want, and then find an agent who understands what you want. You know, we talk about know your why, and the agent should ask, well, why do you want to work locums? And, you know, we break it up into recently graduated, career, retirement, but what's your, somebody asked me last night, Dr. Wimmer, if you were to work locums today, you know, tomorrow, because right now I have a full-time job, what would be what you want? And it was very easy. It's like, well, I want the job with the highest hourly compensation. That's it. I don't care where I go, or what I do, because I want to come home so that I can give that money to my wife. Now that wouldn't have been my answer 20 years ago. So I think it really depends where you are and what's your priority. But I think the agent has to understand that and isn't just looking to fill a slot. So you spend some time on the phone with the agent until you find somebody who kind of gets it, you know, what you want. And then when that agent calls you, you call back immediately. I mean, that is, you drop what you're doing and you call that agent. Because otherwise, it's just going to call somebody else with that job that just, you know, popping up. And that way, you'll get the position that you want before somebody else does, or before it's even listed. You know, by the time that thing is in the email, you know, it's already late. So develop a one-on-one. I think that's what's really important.
Any thoughts from you guys about choosing the right agency, choosing the right recruiter?
Yeah, I would just reiterate that getting the right recruiter agency is just a key thing. The best jobs I've gotten is when the recruiter actually didn't present a list of jobs to me, but actually sat down and talked with me at length about what I was looking for, and so they could tailor make the position with that. And I'll also say, to add to that, look for a company recruiter that protects you while you're on the job, and that are very responsive to a call, to if you get into a bad situation, it's going to get you out. And you know, my current recruiter, you know, I work for Medicus. Shout out to them. You know, heck, I tell them if I get a flat tire on the road, I'm calling them before I call AAA. Because they'll get me out. And they just become, you know, your best friend over a couple of years. So I would just really.
Yeah, in choosing the locums agency and recruiter, I guess whomever hasn't spammed my email as much as I'd like, you know, in all seriousness, same exact thing. I really love it when I hear a phone call to say, I saw this job opening and I thought about you about this job. And that, to me, always kind of perks up my ears and reminds me that this is kind of this symbiotic relationship of understanding what I want, what I'm looking for. Nothing worse than getting an email saying, hey, would you like an internal medicine position? And I'm like, well, I'm not an internal medicine doctor, so it's kind of really hard to do that. But, just understanding myself, what a desire sometimes would say that can change. And it can be dynamic. Sometimes you're all in on inpatient, sometimes you're all in on outpatient, and sometimes those can change or they can vary. But I really loved hearing hey, I picked up the phone because I thought of you when this position came up. Whether it's location, whether it's job description, that's always reassuring also for myself.
So good listener, want to know what the why, what's important to you, and support and responsiveness. Great. Thank you. And so, how do you determine, besides the highest paying job, what are some other factors in terms of how you decide what assignment to take or what facility you want to go work for?
Yeah, for me, it actually goes to that support. So how streamless is the onboarding experience going to be? How well are the logistics planned out? Are they going to dump you out somewhere you've never been and say figure it out and see how it goes? Or is there some thoughts on a plan on how you can make the most of your experience there and your impact there? So yeah, it goes more to the support, and that is important for me.
Right.
I think initially when I started doing locums, it was very short-term assignments, and it was, I think less important for me about exactly what was going on there. It just was length of the assignment was more important to me than anything. I could hold some breath for 2 weeks, need be. As I went longer assignments, it became, and I saw I was going to do this almost permanently. A couple of things are very important. One is the types of cases I was going to be doing. The other was the culture. You have to fit in with the culture if you're going to be there long term with the department, and they have really, really good relations. And for me, I had some very specific kind of interests that were matched very well. I was an academic, clinician scientist. I had an NIH receptor physiology lab. I taught, residents, fellows, and to get matched to Dartmouth, an academic center, was like, wow, this is really great. And when I arrived there and met with the chairman, he was shocked. He got an academic guy from locums. And I was happy to be there in an academic center. And so it was like this match made in heaven. And it just fit in with the culture and everything else. So, having said that, short-term assignments are fun. If you're looking at long-term, I initially signed on with Dartmouth for 2 months only. To go up there, see what it's like, see if I fit, both, I fit with them and they fit with me. Then we would branch off, and when we found this was working great, we go forward for longer term. So I think that's the biggest thing. You have to get in here and feel the culture and how you're going to be interacting.
I can add a few things. One of the things that I discovered in locums that I didn't realize, I thought that all locums jobs, I'm a neurologist, where you show up and you take care of patients, kind of in a private practice, community hospital model. So once there was a job at Hennepin County Medical Center, Street County, part of University of Minnesota. So I flew up there, I'm very well prepared. I got there Sunday, I was supposed to meet the orientation lady at 8 o'clock, and I'm gung-ho, ready to see my patients. And she was late, and then she took me to get my ID. And it took like an hour. And then she took me somewhere else to get like a parking sticker, and that took like another hour. and she's having coffee, and I'm looking at my watch. It's like, hey, I gotta get going here. You know, there's patients waiting, gotta make rounds. Oh, it's okay, Dr. Wilner. And finally, it's noon, and we're still doing all this bureaucratic, BS. And I was just like ready to explode because I'm going to be here until midnight. And finally, she shows me where I'm supposed to work. And there's a whole team of residents. Oh, good morning, Dr. Willers. Good morning. And they said, oh, we saw everybody already, and we just want to review a few cases with you. I said, okay, that'll be fine. It's like, wow, this is great. And that's the way it was, that I had a team of residents, and my job was to supervise, basically what I do now, my full-time job as an academic. But I didn't know that there was even such a thing as an academic local tenants job. So I ended up actually going back there again, on another assignment. And it was still work, and they would call me in the middle of the night, but I never had to literally run back. I was often there late, but it made it much more fun for me because I had people to talk to during the day, and I didn't have to run to everything by myself. So now, if I were looking, in addition to my other criteria, I would look for help. Is there a nurse practitioner? What happens in those days? Is there a physician's assistant? Is there medical students? Are there residents? Is there a team? Because you're going to get held up. Okay, this guy needs a cardiology consult. Who do I call? I don't know, right? It's my first day. So if you're working with somebody who's been there, or, I can't figure out how to order a, NMO panel, maybe somebody knows how to do that. So I think going into a situation where there's something of a team could be a big plus, if that's what you like. And for me, I enjoy that.
Yeah, we do a lot of support staff, that's a big difference, resources. Thank you for that. So I'd love to dive into the opposite end of the spectrum. So tell us about some times that you had a challenge working with a locals company, maybe a negative experience, and what that was like, and how folks in the room can prevent that. I'm sorry, sir.
I got a ton of stories. But what I said, to have a company protect you, I took a position, and one of my criteria was no call, and they promised no call for me. But their idea of no call is the regular shift, you'd be working till midnight or 1 a.m. I was like, good grief. I'd rather take call than I get the next day off, rather than be here till midnight and have to be back here at 6. That was a disaster, and it was, and I got out of that. They let me, get out within a week because it was not good. This is a good story. I took a position I won't say where, hospital. And the first day I came in, and I looked at the board, and my name was down there. I thought, well, I'll get an orientation day or something. And I met with when everybody started wandering into the OR during the early morning of the day there, I finally met with the chairman, and he introduced himself. He small talked a little bit, sat me down. He says, here's the situation. I go, oh, great. He says, the hospital itself pays for the locums to cover our, by contract, our vacation needs. But according to the contract, they will collect the patient fees. They will collect the billing instead of our group for anything a locums does. He says, quite frankly, we're quite happy to cover everything we can. We got enough staff. We would like for you not to do any cases because we'll lose the revenue. There's a very nice doctor's lounge upstairs. We'll give you a beeper if you don't mind doing a consult or two during the day or pre-op. We'd be happy with that. That was, 3-4 weeks I was there. I come in the morning, at breakfast, I sit around for 8 hours, I go consult. I happen to be working on my graduate studies at the time, so I got a lot of work done. 4 weeks to come back, and I was like, oh, okay. He said, maybe you can come back and work for us again. I says, well, that'd be great. Why don't you just send a check to my home and, deal with the travel thing. So I've had that. I've had once where, somebody didn't sign off on the contract at the hospital after I'd been working there a week and got staff paged to the office. I thought it was a code, but they were telling me, you're not credentialed. And I had to go back and have everybody sign off on my charts for the past week and sit around in a hotel for another week, and they finally couldn't get the credentialing packet done on time. It was just like a disaster. But, you know, those things happen.
Yeah. Laura,
Yeah, so similarly, go to a hospital system thinking that I'm going to be covering a hospital, come to find out I'm covering 3 hospitals. And then also apparently 20 plus urgent care centers at the same time. So call was definitely very different in their eyes than in my eyes. You know, thinking I'm going to be covering one hospital for call and stroke alerts and other things, and come to find out I'm rounding in 3 different hospitals. So things like that can be jarring. You know, as a physician, you always obviously want to do the best for your patient first, and learn a system. You know, every hospital is different. Every you know, they all have nuances. So when you're faced with those sort of things in a place where you're not familiar with, it just adds to the stress level, particularly if you're there for a week or 2. And apparently, you know, that situation was the reason why I was actually replacing another locals person. And so during our sign out, she basically was like, "Brian, this place is horrible." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." What did I sign up for? I survived, but clearly didn't go back to that institution again, because that kind of was their culture. But you know, as they were mentioning, I could hold my breath for pretty long and survive, you know, pretty resilient. So if I am prepared for it, I think it's much better than being surprised by it. So yeah, just trying to do the due diligence of understanding the assignment, and, you know, and being disclosed the assignment, and that transparency.
what you, Dr. Bowman?
A few things. One, I've been very lucky that all of my assignments have been free. That being said, I've approached them all with a very low bar. Because the fact that they need you in the first place means that it's not the best job in the world. There's somebody else would already have. So you have to, you know, understand that going in, that they wouldn't be desperate to find you if things were great. So there will be things that are not great, that, you know, flexibility. People, you know, there are some physicians who probably won't succeed easily in locums because they have their way they want to do it. And when you get to one of these places, that's just going to be incompatible with everybody's happiness. So you have to be very, very flexible. One thing I was talking to a few people last night that I found very helpful is asking to speak to a physician who has been there before you get there.
Yeah.
Because at least doctor to doctor, because, you know, I think the agents are really at a disadvantage. I mean, they don't really know, like I've often asked, for example, how many patients I'm going to see during the day? They'll say, okay, 15. But is that 15 new patients? Or is that new consults? Or is that 15, you know, a dozen of them already there and there are 3? For a neurologist, that makes a world of difference. No agent has never known the answer to that because they're not into it deep enough to know. They'll always say, well, I'll look it up or I'll try and find out for you. But so talking to someone who's been there before is obviously what you should do. I think in terms of the system, I have had a couple of scenarios where I was all set to go, and had it been this happened, I was supposed to start September 1, you know, I had my calendar cleared, and the credentialing wasn't done. And they were desperate to have me come. And the credentialing was them. In other words, they couldn't get out of their own way. They only met once a month, and the paperwork had missed the last August meeting, so now they're gonna have to wait until the next September meeting so I can start October. Well, so I always tell, you know, prospective locums, you know, you should have 6 months of living expenses, you know, in a cash account, right? Because this stuff happens. I got plenty of other things to do, so I was able to keep myself busy for that month. It wasn't really a heartbreaker, but I think that is the way the system is designed. And there was no explanation. It's like, oh, Dr. Roden, I got a call from the agent the day before I was supposed to go, and which was just at the 30-day mark, that the hospital, they don't need you now. What? Well, they don't need you now. That's it. It's not like something happened or there's some justification. It's just like, they don't need you now. That's all I have to say. That's all I found out. So that's part of being flexible, is it goes both ways.
Yeah.
I could also change my mind in the 30-day mark too, if I got better off. So it does work either way, but that's something that if you've been traditionally employed, for 10 years, that you're not really sort of expected.
I just want to add on to that. Yeah, always, I insist on talking to the medical director, and a lot of times the medical director will insist on talking to me first. And we will go over what cases I want to do and my expertise and everything, so we're really clear. That's always been a really smooth transition when I got there. But I just want to follow up. When I first started doing locums physicians were sort of suspect because, well, why are you doing locums? You're not good enough to be in a group. And conversely, it's like, for me, it was like, I'm helping out these groups that can't get their act together and can't staff efficiently, or the hospital. So, on that end, I don't think that's true anymore. I think there are really, really good physicians out there, real experts who are deciding the locums lifestyle is the better way to go. I think with the physician shortage just escalating, it's going to get worse. I mean, good groups are really finding it hard to staff. So I think that negative aspect of locums and and groups that need help like that, I think that's a thing of the past. And I think the wave of the future is really going to be, locums physicians, really top-notch doctors taking that lifestyle, and everybody needing help. Have to go that way.
Yeah, no, I will second that. I think this idea that you are just getting these general practice, either some specialist or groups, is a way of the past. I mean, you're getting double certified, board certified subspecialists or super subspecialists in my current duration. We have nothing but subspecialists running a level 4 epilepsy center, out of locals, and that's unheard of in my field. And we gave it a go, and we were very clear in expectations and good conversations with everybody, and we've been able to kind of continue to move that needle for them because the community needed it, because they needed to continue to function. And and I think, like I said, that the day of not being able to find good candidates is going to be a long gone. We're going to get high quality candidates and people who choose them for their lifestyle or for the flexibility or for every other reason, and try to actually open the window, because obviously a recruiter or an agent can do much more resources to find you the jobs than you can looking at a bulletin board yourself. So.
And I think academic medical centers have always been reticent to hire locums, and that's going to change, and they got to change, and I think they're starting to see that, and that's going to be a huge market, I think. Everybody I talk to back in academics are going like, yeah, we got to change this. We got to get the hospital to get on board, because we just can't staff anymore.
The best is when I would leave a hiring position, and then 2 weeks later they come and ask me to come back again. Even in my exit interview, I'm like, well, how are you guys going to staff all of this? If I leave, and they're like, well, we'll figure it out. So I'll figure it out by calling me back. And it's like, well, the shoe's on the other foot now, so now it's a different story. So
Awesome. We've got a couple more questions, and I want to leave 10 minutes or so at the end for Q&A from the group. So brainstorm your questions, everybody. So would love to hear, in your perm positions, when the locums comes into your facility, have you had experience with that, and what's that been like, kind of receiving the locums coming into your facility?
Yeah, we've actually, I'm at the University of Tennessee, Memphis, associate professor of neurology, and I've been there, this is my 7th year, And we've been recruiting for more people like me since I got there, and haven't recruited anyone. I think it's very difficult for them to offer attractive recruitment packages. Initially, the vice president, the guy who signs my paycheck, said, no locums. We don't want locums. No locums. Okay. And then one day he said to me, we're hiring locums. So something changed, in the boardroom. I'm not at that level. But all of a sudden, obviously, there was money available now. And I see predominantly inpatients, but we also have a clinic. And the clinic, is this being recorded? It's not being transmitted anywhere, right? So anyway, our clinic needs a lot of work. It's not efficient. And so we had a local tenant, a woman came to help us out because we were backlogged, months and months. It's a county hospital, so our patients often, there's a poor show rate, and they often are not well informed about their histories, and it can be challenging. Anyway, she quit. She said our clinic was so bad that she quit. So they got another one, and the same thing happened. She quit. I thought, this is great, because there's somebody besides me, who is pointing out some deficiencies in how things are being run. But I was really surprised because as a locums, most of my locums was more than 7 years ago. I mean, it was just like whatever, you just dealt with it and did it, but it never occurred to me to quit a locums assignment because it was that bad. But for whatever they were used to, and then we got another locums guy, the pre-retirement guy, who didn't quit. I mean, he did, but after a year. I think it was other reasons. So I think locums is, the moral, and whereas, I tolerate the clinic, and I think maybe that's from years of working locums that I, can put up with it. But I think it's very hard to fit in, and that you can be in the system, the EMR, and there's all these obstacles that are sort of built in. That, and it's interesting, they didn't have the commitment, right? I have kind of a commitment because I bought a house there, my kids in school there, and so it's like, I'm gonna make it work, but if you're a locum, it's like, oh, that sucks on you. So, it's a different set of priorities. I thought that was kind of interesting.
So most of my locums experiences has been as a sole provider practitioner. Up until recently, I hadn't had a lot of joint locums, doctors, integration. But my current facility, as I mentioned, we are all locums, so we're all flying in from different places: Los Angeles, Austin, Michigan, and that's been a nice experience because I think we share very same interests and view of things. And again, we're all very prestigious CVs, all went to great schools, all had great fellowship training. And so, you look at it and it'd be probably envious to have us there for full-time, let alone to have all these people come in and locums. And probably for sure this facility would not be able to recruit them full-time, with our CVs. No disparage them, but just, it is what it is. And, but yet they're still able to recruit these people through, the agencies and the recruiters. And it's the best of both worlds, I think, for all of us.
A long time ago, I won't say how long, my first private practice job, got into that. There was a locums that was there, semi-permanent locums. He was a great guy. He was one of the better anesthesiologists there. Everybody, nurses respected him highly. And I didn't know anything about locums. I didn't even know the term. All I know is that this guy lived in a hotel in town. He took long vacations. And we worked like crazy to get him out the door at 3 o'clock every day, or we'd start paying him overtime. And I liked it. We were like, I just said, man, why don't you just join the group? And our group was pretty messed up. And I remember him looking at me and going like, why would I want to do that? And now I understand. I understand exactly what he did.
That's great. Thank you for that. And one last question before we jump into Q&A. One thing that obviously is unique about locums is just the burden of travel and all that goes into that. So, what are some challenges you face while traveling, and any suggestions for the locum tenens companies that are here, how they can make that experience better for you? Start, Dr. Wilmer.
Sure. Well, I mentioned earlier, there's a chapter on that in my book too, because, travel is a big part of locums. And I always like to get there a day ahead. And in fact, on a new assignment, I get there 2 days ahead. Because I want to know where am I going to park, and how am I going to get there, and how much traffic is there. And, do some reconnaissance. Because, first day anywhere is a big deal. You don't know where anything is. So at least get the logistics there so I don't end up 20 minutes late because I don't know where to park my car. And also travel's gotten pretty rough. Planes are late, they're canceled. So you have to build in a lot of extra time. And my life circumstances changed where I didn't want to travel as much. I have a permanent job now because I was flying 1 day before my week, and then after my week, I would be flying. So my 7-day paid week was really a 9-day commitment. So I had a laptop, and I'd work in the plane. I had a 3-hour plane ride, and I knew I was traveling a lot when I started recognizing the flight attendants, because they had that Phoenix to Minneapolis route, which is a nice 3-hour flight. But it's like, so they, it was a thing, right? Every other week I'd fly up. So I think learning how to be productive during your downtime, and then of course when you're there, so when I would get there, I would buy, food for the week, so that at the end of the day, I'd be tired, I wouldn't have to go to a restaurant, I wouldn't have to shop, I had stuff in the freezer, and then where you're staying, do they have a gym, so you can work out, I'd come home and nothing to do, nobody's there, so I'd work out in the evenings. You have to find a way, and then talk to everybody you know and say, I'm going to Dartmouth, I think it's New Hampshire, for 3 months. Do you know anybody there? Because, just having one person who lives there can sort of open up a whole world for you. Find long-lost relatives, they'll take you out to dinner, and show you places to go, as opposed to just going back to your hotel and you've got Netflix. And that's it. So I think travel is a big part. Now, some people travel because they want to sightsee. I have always found it difficult to combine those things. I just would do my work and go, maybe I'd take a half day. I think Minneapolis, I took 1 day off to go to the mall, right? It's the biggest mall in the world. So I had to go to the mall. But otherwise, I my sort of locums was not, I didn't really have sort of free travel. But travel's a big deal. I mean, you gotta sort of think about it.
Do not underestimate the potential stressor of travel on an assignment. Obviously it's not always in our control, but just to have that in mind and underestimate it, particularly like tight connection flights, pay close attention to that. Obviously pay close attention to high traffic connecting flight cities. So, don't give yourself a 20-minute connection time in O'Hare. For instance, you gotta be skeptical of that, and if your doctor is like, yeah, sure, I can make it, be cognizant of that. Thankfully, for the most part, travel, it does wear on you, but ultimately it's part of the process. I've enjoyed it, and as long as there's a good organization, it's worked out for me.
Yeah, and important. Remember, every time you take an assignment, what you're doing is you're given 2 paid days for travel. So that you have to take that, even though the travel is compensated, you're still giving up 2 days for every assignment. One thing I want to stress is that one of the hardest parts about recruiting locums early on is ones that have families. and you got to be away from your family. That was a tough thing for me early on. That's why I kind of delayed doing it a lot. Was I didn't want to be away from my family. And if I couldn't find something close by, travel that was the burden. It wasn't the travel itself, it was just being away from home. And so, my wife travels with me everywhere now. We have a place up in Vermont, New Hampshire, where we work, and she goes with me everywhere. And so I think that's really important. It'll take the burden off a lot if you can accommodate for families and spouses with travel, because that's the biggest stressor, is having to be away. Travel per se, you can deal with that. Being away from home, not so much. So you want to take that into account.
Great. Thank you so much. So I wanted to open up the floor for Q&A. Any questions that you guys would like to ask directly of our physician panel? Yes.
So to follow up on the question about travel, I'm curious if you prefer that the agency handle the travel arrangements, or if you like control and anything else related to travel.
Most agencies have a travel department, and they help out a lot. Yeah, that takes a lot of burden off it, and it's really helpful if they're really flexible and they let you kind of choose how you want to go about doing it. We travel between Maryland and New Hampshire. It's my wife here. We love driving. Driving's not a thing. I said, if I can drive it a day, I don't want to fly. And so I don't know how many trips we made up and down, but it's fun. We like it. So it's just giving a little flexibility, because everybody has different preferences. But yeah, they having them schedule things and have you be your travel agent's great.
Yeah, no, I like to have a little bit of control of that. It's personal preference. And again, if I were to have the area of support in the background, whether that's improved rental car rates, or whether that's airfare rates, or whether, I have a problem with my connecting flight, to have that sort of backup so that you're not alone in the process of trying to get to where you need to be.
Yeah, I prefer to do as little as possible. So I would talk with the travel department and say, okay, find me a place to live as close to the hospital as possible, because I want to walk every day if I can. And then I would research the flights and say, these are the flights I want to take, put me on those. So, because reimbursement is a nuisance. And, saving your ticket, sending it in later, when you're done with the assignment, you want to be done. People send receipts for this, receipts for that, so just put it all on your bill. You find the hotel, you pay for it, pay for the flights, you have the rental car in case I needed it, and then I don't have to do anything except show up. So that's what I think.
Other questions?
Hi, so I'm the VP of credentialing, so I know credentialing is often the most tedious part of getting an assignment. How can we help that process, or how much help, or what can we do to improve that process for you guys?
Auto-populate things. I can't, if I have to fill out where I went to med school and the dates and everything, 20 different assignments every single time, that gets really frustrating. And obviously, that's, for us, unfortunately, it's kind of just uncompensated time, right? So if we're there trying to open up our schedule, we go to a rural place, and then to have 5 hours of paperwork to fill out, it gets pretty daunting. So, helping that process as seamless as possible, and does it still correct, have a signature here and there, it's much easier than just handing over a package of credentialing.
Hospital credentialing is just like a disaster.
And it's obviously not your guys' fault as well.
No,
We've
right.
been in that system, I understand that, so just being cognizant of that.
I have great respect for them, because most people who work with me, they really help streamline it. But I think one thing, just forewarning, I tell all my residents who are interested in doing locums or even attending, because I get the seminar on it, I say, start right now, list, get PDF files of everything you have. I mean, from kindergarten transcripts on. And, everything, every diploma, every certificate, start listing every job you've ever taken and contact information, telephone numbers, and start that packet right now. And, so that when it comes time, you have it all there. You can just hand it over. That helps your job a lot. Yeah.
You have that one folder you send over with everything from Bert, like you said,
It's that they never know what's going to be asked, and it's a two-way street. So they're going to do their job best if we are prepared and have that packet. And I can't tell you how many physicians just stop even keeping track of all that stuff. And so that education is really important to help each other out. Can't do anything about the hospital. They're asked.
Any other thoughts on credentialing? Anyone's favorite?
I'll tell you a story. It took me 8 months to get credentialed at Johns Hopkins one time when I came back. I'll tell you what happened. So I was out of work for 8 months. I had to find another locums job in the interim. So, and they never told me why it was being held up. And finally I had to go in the office and figure it out, right? What happened was I had worked at Southern Maryland Hospital for locums assignment, okay? On my CV or packet I put in, it said Southern Maryland, and then went to page 2 or 4 or 5 or whatever it was. So it got truncated, okay? Well, in Baltimore, there's Southern Baltimore General Hospital, okay? They interpreted that as Southern Baltimore, so they called Southern Baltimore General Hospital, wanted a, thing, and of course said, we never heard of this guy, he never worked here. And so they said, no, well, we'll just throw that in the pile, and they never got back to it because this guy lied about his credential. So finally, when I got, after months, I went back there and got it, and I figured this out, that they misread it. See, I had to write a letter to Southern Baltimore Hospital to have them write a letter to Johns Hopkins saying that I never worked there before they would, and I finally got into the office and I wouldn't leave until they went through the packet and got it corrected. I said, I'm not leaving. They do it, so it's just bizarre what happens. Aaron?
You mentioned that it's important that the recruiter protects you on the job. I'm a chief risk officer, so I'm just curious how you feel that the locums companies protect you while you're on the job from the risk standpoint. If there's an adverse event that happens, do you feel like there's a process in place? Or have you had that happen from the risk side?
I would say that the hospital has its own risk management, and that's your primary resource to go through if something happens. You have an adverse, like for me, you had an adverse event in OR or something, you immediately work with risk management in the hospital. That's your primary go-to because they're the ones that are going to be involved first. But you do call your locums agency right away, and you let them know what's going on so that they're in the loop about it as well. But most of the time, if you're credentialed by the hospital, you're hired by the hospital. It's their risk management that you're primarily dealing with. But the locums needs to know about it too, because they're more than likely supplying your malpractice insurance and your liability as well, so they need to be on top of it too. But I find the hospitals are generally pretty on top of things and get you through the process if need be. Hopefully you don't have to, it's nothing that.
Yeah, I agree with that. For me, the agency is also helpful in terms of getting paid. I like to have a third party because it's very asymmetric. The hospital is this huge organization with lots of attorneys and vice presidents, and then there's just me. And if they decide they're not going to pay you or do something, pay you less, or they don't really need you, they're like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to challenge the contract? You're going to sue them? you just let it go because, you're just over, it's a David and Goliath scenario. But if I'm working for, I don't know, Comp Health or Jackson Coker, and then I'm having a problem, I tell them, say, look, you hired me. I don't care if the hospital is paying you or not. I want what you promised me. And then my relationship is with the agency, and I'm a lot more comfortable with that because the agency certainly doesn't want me to go online and say all kinds of bad things about them, whereas the hospital couldn't care less. So I think having the agent as a go-between is very, very, it shores up my position a little bit. And also, in my experience, it's gotten me more money. There's the issue where, well, should you use an agency at all because they're taking a cut? So theoretically, you're going to make less, right, if there's a middleman. But in fact, the agency can actually negotiate a higher rate. This has happened to me than I was able to negotiate as an individual. So even though the agency did take a cut, I still ended up getting more. So 2 + 2 doesn't always add up to 4. It's a lot more complicated than that. So particularly for people just starting out, unless you have a relationship with the hospital next door and they can hire you and your buddies and you don't need an agency, you're going to go out of town and then you need a place to live and flights and you don't know the place, I would definitely recommend using an agency that's done all this before.
I would, actually, I would say even if you know the hospital and it's your best friends and you're going to try and negotiate, do not do it directly, ever. I tell this, not ever. Always, always, always go through an agency. You need that buffer. Once you sign directly with the hospital, they own you. And so I say, I don't care how well you know the hospital, if you worked for them 10 years before, or whatever, don't do anything except through an agency, period. And to me, my agency at Dartmouth, a couple years ago, they negotiated me a substantial raise, get me up to where, commensurate with where things were going. I did not have to have an awkward conversation with my chairman. I didn't have to go through any negotiating process. I was one step removed. It was so easy and came through big time for me. And so I just tell people, don't even think about not using an agency when you do locums or try and negotiate part-time work at all. But I say it as a hard and fast rule.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Well, great, this has been fantastic. Okay.
I'm Al, I'm new. Real quick, I've worked for one of those places that are not so nice or had not been so nice to locums and suffer from abandonment issues, or the runaway bride syndrome for locums. I'm here because we need you guys. And the health center don't think that we need you because they don't think you're going to stay. So my first question is, and I know it's person by person, case by case situation, do locums treat their opportunities as 30-day vacations? And if not, if you so find yourself in a place like mine as, the chief medical officer and the providers are going to treat you, as you think you're going to be treated because they don't think you're going to be here in 30 days, what can the health center do to love on you that after that 30 days that you might want to stay?
I've been at Dartmouth going on 6 years now as a locums. So, if I find it, I think most of them, they find a good spot. It's got a good culture that's treating them well, that they like, that's convenient. It is infinitely easier to keep returning, a returning client, so to speak, than to do a whole bunch of different jobs everywhere else. Because you're already on board, you're already familiar with the hospital, you're already credentialed, it's simple. So if you develop that good relationship and treat them right, they're gonna come back. it's going to be a repeat, and for us, repeat jobs, repeat, gigs at one place. And I've had a couple, and we like it. I like it. It's considered basically a permanent locums. They just, they basically handshake agreement with whatever you want, as long as you want. They consider you a 0.5 FTE here on out. So.
Sure.
How about Doctor's Day?
What about doctors?
Even when Paul's not there for Doctor's Day, when he shows up, whether it's a month later or a week later, they always say present, they always order.
Yeah, they treat me like staff there. And I would say like, probably a lot of the, most of the residents, a lot of the faculty still, a lot of the CRNAs haven't realized a locum's coming. I've been there longer than some of the staff have, so.
So does that mean if you have another degree, you'll take that over an assignment where you're not credentialed or privileged, that checks more boxes?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, it's, obviously I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't check a lot of the boxes, I don't think I'd venture to take another assignment even if it paid more. I get lots of offers for higher paying assignments, but it's not worth it, especially for what I'm doing. Again, I'm a little different. My goals are maximizing income. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I couldn't do that. I'd be stupid. So, yeah, for me, if I like a place, I'll stay with it. I've worked about 15 phone assignments. I think 4 of them have been something I've gone back to, for at least a year. That and Dartmouth has been the longest. I would much rather do that.
All right, let's give our panel a round of applause.